Hereby reconvening opening session at 6:01 p.m. Moving on to 11, reports and announcements. Governing board members. Does somebody want to go first? Okay. So one of the things that I'm pleased with is the staff that we have here and been privileged to work with them. Heather, fight on. I love you and really do appreciate you. Michelle, it was really special to be at your graduation yesterday and watch that. I hope you weren't bothered by the old man who spoke at graduation 40 years ago or something like that. He graduated from Rim High School. And I hope that was okay for you. Yes. It was really a privilege to have Scott represent the school district and be the choice of the students. It was really kind of cool, Scott, to be watching you and the kids and their connection with you. And that was special to do that. I just want to make a comment, and it might not make everyone feel good, but I want to just remind us that as a district, we have a responsibility to care about one another and to really be careful about the things that we do that are forms of gossip, that are forms of dissent, that are communicating negative things about one another. I think those things are very harmful, not helpful. I understand that human nature likes to hear a story, and if they think it's negative, they like to repeat it. But I think that the more we can do to avoid that, the better. And I would challenge us to be better. We are an incredible district and with incredible people. And I would challenge us to avoid the things that might harm one another by us talking about each other in some kind of a negative way. And if you do actually have a complaint against somebody, then I would encourage you to take it to the proper channels. And that is me, go to Shannon. Seriously, he is our HR representative. And so if there is an issue and you are concerned about something, he's the right guy to go to. And I know him well enough right now that he won't mistreat you and he'll protect you. So please, if you do have a complaint, instead of going to your neighbor and getting them to go to somebody else and talking about it with somebody else, go to Shannon. Okay? Maybe that should be our new phrase across the district. If somebody brings something to you, like especially gossip, just say, go to Shannon. All right, that'll make it very easy. Say, don't even stop and listen. You know, I don't know whatever you're going to say, but go to Shannon. So my challenge to the entire district to be positive, because we have a lot to be positive about. Somebody want to follow me?
Sure, I'll take it. Helps if I put the microphone on. I have had a wonderful couple of weeks spending time on campuses and learning from students, and it's been quite a blessing. And just past couple of years have been tough, definitely emotionally. COVID has really done a number on us, and then Snowmageddon has not been tremendously pleasant. And so I think I needed an attitude adjustment, and our students gave it to us, or gave it to me. I learned, I went to the LAE's Invention Convention and got to experience fifth graders' inventions that were ingenious, and more importantly, their enthusiasm and love and passion for the creations that they came up with. And it was inspiring. It was really, really lovely. I was particularly amused by one of the inventions, which was basically, some home created dough made to look like food that you put on a seat to save for yourself. If you need to go somewhere and you want to save your seat, you have your way of, slyly putting it down there, figuring nobody's going to take that seat. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And the sense of humor and enthusiasm that these students presented it with was actually quite inspiring. So that was fun. I also enjoyed going to MPH's reclassification, it wasn't, the school district's reclassification, as far as students who have worked their bottoms off, not having English necessarily as their first language, who have become proficient enough to become, I would just basically graduate out of the English language learner program, and highly inspiring, and also challenging to be able to hear the presentation in Spanish and realizing this is the story of a lot of people's lives on our mountain, and again, teaching me to be able to have that level of compassion for folks who might have difficulty processing the words that I'm putting out there, realizing I have those same difficulties in situations as well. I enjoyed going to VOE a couple of days ago. Thank you for the invitation, Tracy, for the VOE's field day. And there I saw kids of all ages. I was in the chicken, I don't even know what you want to call it, propelling chicken station. So, and the goal was to take various forms of chickens and having them, not live, mind you, plastic, rubber chickens, but to propel them to knock over cups or to land on platforms, and to watch these young ones sticking their finger into a chicken head, pulling the tail, tongue stuck out, focus, really lining up their on the target and letting go. And having the cup fall over, and their excitement, their sense of accomplishment is brilliant, inspiring. The joy and that enthusiasm, I think we all need to embrace that. Whenever we have those experiences where we knock those cups over or land on the platform, we need to celebrate. And so that was fantastic and again inspiring. And then leading on to Mountain High's graduation a couple of days ago, and then Rim High's graduation yesterday. And the grit and the resilience that these kids have had to pull together through being isolated through COVID and having to meet deadlines when not having all the supports available, and the isolation and the lack of social, which is critically important and healthy, and the unhealthy situations that we, the adults, put them into, unfortunately, they still overcame and they succeeded. So what I take out of that is I need to stack it up. I need to do everything I can to be able to help our kids have the best possible futures. And we need to support the staff. Our whole community needs to be there for these kids and not look at excuses, and realize that those sense of accomplishments that we see in the elementary school kids, the resilience and grit that we see all around us, we need to support, and we need to make, we need to make all those structures available to make sure it continues to happen. So that said, everybody have a wonderful summer. We're going to be getting together again in a couple of weeks, and most of you are heading off to summer. Enjoy and make sure that you do all of the healing you need to do to come back fresh in August, so that our kids get your best, because they deserve it. And I know that you have a lot to give. So thank you.
Just want to clarify, Trustee Ridland, did you just take responsibility for COVID-19 and personal given?
That's funny. I guess we'll have to look at the tape later.
Okay. So let's go next.
Okay, so I also attended Mountain High School graduation. I really adore going to that graduation. It's a little bit more intimate and than the Rim High graduation on the football field. And I love seeing those kids, because some of them truly wanted to give up and not cross the finish line, but between the teachers and Ms. Amador, the principal, all getting those kids and pushing them, prodding and bribing and coaxing them to get those last credits can be completed. It's really just a joy. It's just a joy to see them up on that stage and realize that they truly accomplished something they themselves had a little bit trouble believing that they could do. So it's very, very satisfying to see those mountain students, Mountain High School students, cross that finish line and be so proud of themselves. And I appreciated Scott's words. Scott Pratt was the commencement speaker at Mountain as well, had me a little bit teary-eyed over telling the students about find your purpose. And things, once you find that purpose, that passion, things seem to fall in place for you. And I loved it. And that at the Rim High graduation, I appreciated the words, find your own story, find your story. That just resonates with me so much. So again, thanks, Scott. I got a little teary-eyed because you said that. It was beautiful. So thank you so much for being such a brilliant commencement speaker at both graduations. I think it was very meaningful. And I also went to the reclassification, and as Heather Dominguez pointed out, we had not had that many REM High School seniors, I was on the senior track, REM High School students reclassify. And it's so amazing that they did, because now they have that opportunity to have an additional elective, whether it's, AP ceramics, since Scott took it 11 times, or whatever, AP class, or a CTE class, or a fun art class like ceramics. I just think it was wonderful to see REM High School students really cross that finish line for themselves, and to see the parents. I love the parents, the look of joy on parents' faces, and they're so proud of their kid, and yummy food. There you go. It's all about, it's the food too. So just really proud of our kids for, again, having that resilience and crossing the finish line. I think that's the theme right now. Then MPH dance, the luau. I want to congratulate the MPH PTA for putting on a brilliant dance by the lake. It wasn't foggy, but it was chilly. So I was impressed by some of those short dresses I saw as they came in. I was like, wow, you're gonna freeze to death, but you're that age, you don't care, you're gonna have fun by the lake. And it was, right? Mr. Gomes is in here, but it was really cute.
It was freezing.
It was freezing.
It was freezing.
Yeah, so, but the kids had fun. It was really cute decorations, great games, a DJ. So they had a really, really fabulous time. So congratulations to a successful event put on by the PTA. And again, 8th graders crossing that finishing line and getting ready to come to REM High School. So that was really, really fun to see. And then just getting ready for summer, just like all of you. My daughter, I'm going tomorrow to help her pack and move across the country back to California. So I'm super excited to talk about her crossing the finish line almost with her PhD program. I'm excited for her. So I know I'm gonna have a fun couple of weeks with my daughter, one-on-one in the car. Might be a little challenging, we'll see how it goes. But I'm gonna have a great start to my summer. I hope all of you have an amazing, wonderful summer. Have fun in the sun, because we haven't seen it a lot lately. So just bash it out and have a great time. And we'll see you back here in August, which will come really fast. So enjoy yourselves.
Next up.
I guess I'll go next. It was such a privilege for me and to speak, which was great, going to school here, teaching, and like you said, I'm the old man now, So now it's like full circle, so I can die in peace now, probably not. Okay with that. Okay. I did also, Tracy invited me to DOE, so that was fun to see, and to see the kids. They seemed to have just a great time. And it was neat to see Tracy there with her students, marking them out, and the way she handled her class and everything. I did coach Tracy in softball, so it was a little more emotional back then. It's nice to see that she's kind of found her backbone and done such a great job.
Welcome, Tracy.
Yeah, she knows the story. So, yeah, graduation was awesome, and the kids were outstanding. Just to see everybody, the other speeches were way better than my speech, because the students just said, I could have never done that as a student, and that's why they didn't ask me to speak back then. But they were just outstanding, and it was great to see the whole thing. Yeah, I can't read my stuff here. I did also go to the Mountain High graduation, which was outstanding as well. And I don't want to just keep talking about everything. We need to get out here at an early time today, hopefully. But also at DOE, I did also have to learn my PE skills. There was a teacher struggling with everything, and I just kind of told her, I said, why don't you just have the kids go and pick all the stuff up? And they can handle it that way. And so it worked out there that way. Having Mrs. Mayor here reminded me of a former student who I had that was on the mountain bike team. And Mrs. Mayer always did such an outstanding job with her. And it was, the stories that I could tell you would just be hilarious, but like we talked about before, writing your own story. And this student now, I just learned, has gone back to school and got her GED and is working at a church and counseling and doing just great things. So it's neat to hear that, because sometimes us people, anybody, we have to go through things before we can really understand what we're gonna do. And so I'm so excited to hear about that. Bobby was her name, Bobby is her name, and she's doing great things, so that's good. I want to remind everybody that we are getting the t-shirts for next year that say, go to Shannon.
Go to Shannon. Go to Shannon.
We can pass them out at the beginning of the year. I think that'd be great.
First session with the whole district. Everyone should get a shirt. Go to Shannon.
And the last name's not Owen, it's Ian, so go Hanson.
Okay.
We're not putting your last name on there.
And lastly, having the teachers here, the retirees, everybody, that when the district works together, it's so great, and I love to see that. And I'm sad to see some people go and they're retired, but I know they'll probably be involved, hopefully somehow. And I want to remind everybody that there are so many of our teachers that went to school here, that grew up here, and now they're just part of this process. And that's what I love a lot about this school district and the community. And have a great summer. Thank you.
Trustee Zarate.
Good evening. I don't have much to add on to what everyone's saying. Definitely congratulations to you, Michelle. Congratulations to all of our retirees. And it was really exciting to go to Mountain High's graduation and Rim High's graduation. I think everyone who put that on, both of those graduations, really deserve a big shout out. Each of them went off, I would say, without a hitch. It felt very seamless. It was orderly, it was festive, it was great. It was everything that I think each graduation should be. So I think that was really wonderful. The band was incredible. Our choir did an amazing job. So I think they both deserve particular shout outs as well. And I think I'll end just by saying I really enjoyed our valedictorian's speech, and I know that her words were an address to the graduating class of 2023, but I think there are words of wisdom that we can take from that as well. And as we go into summer and as we go into the new year, we really ought to rise to that challenge of meeting the full word humankind. So hopefully we can learn a little bit from that and take that to heart. I know I definitely will do that. So thank you.
And with that, we'll turn to our superintendent, Dr. Fricker, for your report.
I can't take notes and speak at the same time. Okay. First of all, I do want to echo the statement by the board members that the graduations at Mountain and Rim were just simply outstanding. It was so nice to have a commencement speech. It was so nice to have the band and the choir sing and just enjoy the festivities. The families had so much fun, and seeing them come onto the field and have those last minute photos is just priceless and special. It only happened once. You have to soak it all in and just enjoy that moment as long as you can stretch it and make it last. So that was really, really amazing to see. Heather, I think that the reclassification at MPH was just outstanding with the music and the dancing and interpretive parts to that ceremony. I've never really seen a ceremony done to that level of just dedication and honor to those students who are transitioning to English language proficient. So thank you for that. That was wonderfully done. I think everybody's looking forward to summer. I think this year has just been completely full of almost everything under the sun that you could throw on an educational system, and we have risen to the challenge. So thank you to all the administrators and teachers and staff, support staff, Board of Education, who have helped us all kind of climb all those mountains throughout the year. I truly appreciate your support. Summer school, I think, is going to be our launch of our extended learning program. And I really can't wait to see what that program does and how we build that moving forward. Thank you, Heather, for you bringing in the coding program, and that will include Minecraft for students, which I know they love. So that would be a great addition to our summer activities for students. I think we have about 350 students.
About 130
Elementary
elementary.
and secondary.
Secondary, I don't have those numbers.
Oh, okay.
They're coordinating all that as we speak.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. But I know that we had a good turnout for that program, so we're excited about that. I do want to say a couple congratulations to Michelle. You have been such a wonderful addition as our student board member throughout this entire year. You've done such a fantastic job. It was an honor to see you graduate yesterday, so congratulations to you. The flowers are for you. The Board of Education and the Cabinet, just to honor you and celebrate you for all that you've done as being a member of our team. To Heather, thank you so much for your service over the years. It has been a pleasure getting to know you and working with you. It's been an honor from the beginning, and I truly admire the work that you've done. I know that you've done so much to move the district forward, behind the scenes, in every single corner of the district, whether you know, it was a small item or a large item, your attention to detail is impeccable. So I do appreciate that. And I like the little saying that you gave me from my desk. So thank you so much. And those flowers are for you from
Thank
the rest
you.
of us.
Thank you.
So to the retirees, thank you all for all of your service and many of your ways, the big things you do, the small things you do, everything that you say and do matter to the people around you, your colleagues, and also to the students that you teach each and every day, or that you serve every single day, whether you are a support staff or you're a teacher. And I think you never really know what it is that you're going to say along the way that's really going to make the most profound impact in the life of somebody else, because you really never know what's going on in their life. And that could be the smallest little thing that would linger with that person for the rest of their life. So just know that all of those gems have been given to so many, and they will keep them. So thank you for your service. And one last thing, pending tonight's board approval, no pressure intended. I do want to just announce and have the individual to stand and be recognized. We do have for the board approval tonight 2 of our new principals that may be joining our team shortly. One to serve, I have to be official. Okay, so one serving Lake Arrowhead Elementary, and that's Miss Jacqueline Longto, whom I think her whole family is here. So ahead of time, welcome. And then so Valley of Enchantment, I also want to recognize one of our own staff members already, Bethany Negersmith, who will be who's supported from the right and the left by teacher in charge, interim principal, and interim principal, right? Thank you both for coming. It is an honor and a pleasure to get to know both of you, and I look forward to next year with both of you at the helm of both of those schools. I know that you're going to do a fantastic job if you're voted in. Right forward, sitting next to me. Anyway, that's it.
Distinguished board members, Dr. Fricker, members of the cabinet, retirees, special guests that are here, and those of you hoping to have a new position. It's my privilege to introduce our student representative, Michelle Helguera, graduate of Rim of the World High School. normally we don't have a report at this meeting from the student representative. But I talked to Michelle, said, you know, she's and so Michelle, it's yours.
Thank you, thank you. I have 3 words, but I'll say them at the end. I don't want to
Certainly.
start too much.
Yeah,
Yeah, rule the world final school reports on my part. So elementary school, sorry. So VOE spent the last few days of the year on fun field trips, playing the annual STAG, which is 5th grader softball game, playing a field day, and having student recognition and student award assemblies. It was a great 2022 to 2023 school year at VOE. LE wrapped up on the final 2-week of performances, Friday flag, VIP recognitions, STAG versus 5th grade softball game, and 5th grade carnival time spent celebrating our friendship with one another. Congrats to all our students and staff for another successful year. CHE finalized the school year with the 5th grade field trip to Pally Mountain, end of the year awards assemblies, field day, Kinder Spring Sing, and a peace out party. Wishing our students and their families a fabulous summer and cannot wait to see everyone back on August 10th. So Mary Comprehensive School. LCAT Goal 1, Student Learning and Instruction. Our MPH teachers updated their assessment calendars and common assessments for the 5 assessment windows identified for the 2023 to 2024 school year. We are looking forward to transitioning our assessment calendars to SCIA standards, curriculum, instruction, and assessment guides to the collaborative efforts of our department teams. On Wednesday, May 31st, MPH hosted award ceremonies for all 3 grade levels. 6th and 7th grade occurred during the school day, and 8th grade was at 5 p.m., including principal's honor roll, and perfect attendance for all 3 years of middle school. Congratulations to our mountain lions who have achieved so much. LCAP Goal 2 and 3, positive school climate, equity, and engagement. On Thursday, June 1st, MPH hosted the annual district English learner reclassification ceremony. We are so proud of all our 39 students who reclassified district-wide, exceeding our goal from reclassifying 10% by reclassifying 15% of our total EL students. On Friday, June 2nd, 38 students who maintained positive behavior, attendance 95% or higher, and grades A to C's, the entire school year attended the principal's field trip at Sky Park. On Tuesday, June 6th, 8th grader students attended the MPH PTA 8th grade promotion dance and light break. It was a great time had by all. Congratulations to MPH retiree Miss Katie Mayer for 23 years of service. You'll be greatly missed. The River Virtual Academy. We promoted 1 TK and 6 kindergartners Wednesday, June 7th at 1 p.m. To the delight of the families that came out in forth with balloons and flowers to cheer them on. Shout out to TK4 teacher Carla Lewis who made it special. 17 8th graders promoted. 14 seniors graduated from RVA, 9 of which marched with RHS while wearing a special RVA stole. And ingenuity training for the entire staff begins Friday, June 9th. Mountain High School. Thank you, esteemed board members and cabinet for attending our graduation and meant so much to our MHS community. Sky Park hosted a principal's field trip Thursday, June 1st. Shout out to Sky Park. 21 students received recognition for earning 10 or more credits in the last 2 credit checks during a final credit check celebration Monday, June 5th. Tony's Kitchen donated taquitos and quesadillas with all the fixings to add to the festivities. Shout out to Tony's. McDonald's donated burger patties for a senior barbecue and grad practice event thanks to Camp Castro. Those students graduated Tuesday, June 6th. Shout out to the Lake Arrowhead Rotary, Sunrise Rotary, and Rim Education Foundation for the number of scholarships they awarded our students. Looking ahead and based on our current enrollment, we anticipate having about 16 graduates by December 21, 2023. And Rim High School. Rim High School hosted its 67th commencement yesterday. 220 graduates walked across the stage to the new adventure. Today, RHS teachers toured Big Bear High School to learn about the special ed inclusion model. RHS will begin inclusion next year with their 9th graders. Congratulations to Mr. Whitesell and Mr. Salmons who will be retiring. You will be missed. Congratulations to our EL students. This year we had 15 reclassified exceeding our 10% target. And summer school starts on Monday, June 12th. And just the last one. Thank you all so much for being such an amazing audience. And of course for giving me the absolute honor of representing our district. It was a wonderful experience and journey and I will never forget it. Just the memories just come back here and there. Just my freshman year getting cut in half. because of COVID, and now I'm here, just graduated. It definitely was a journey. It's always gonna be in the front of my mind. But I would just like to give my appreciation and full thanks to everyone. Again, it was the biggest honor I could have had, and a really big privilege, and yeah. I hope everyone has a really good summer.
Thank you, Michelle. All the best and God bless you as you move forward in your life. And we'll look forward to seeing you maybe on the stage in 40 years, like the old man here. Well, yeah, that's right. You're gonna come back and be a teacher, though. That's right. I forgot.
I know what car you drive.
Okay.
12, discussion information items. Yeah. Business services update of the budget and enrollment report by Jenny Haberlin, Chief Business Official. Okay, Jenny.
One moment.
I do always say I know how to clear a room when it comes to talking. I'm good at it. No offense.
But we didn't vote on her yet.
That's at the end of the agenda, though.
That's good.
Yeah.
Sorry, it'll be 1 second, okay?
Yeah, take your time, Mark. Look at it. Now we can go get our future principal back here to see if we really want her.
I'll text her.
Go to Shannon.
Go to Shannon.
Go to Shannon.
Shannon is easy to go to, trust me. No one should be afraid.
They try to, well, that's, that's my answer.
That's how you're worried. Yeah.
So we should have been able Yeah, we'll put it across it.
You should go to Shannon.
How do you spell Shannon?
SHA.
I thought so, okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
We'll do it for full fees.
We have the.
Yeah.
Here we go.
We'll wait till what's up here, if that's okay. And let's get me to start.
We start with the proposed budget or?
So I'll be able to fast forward through some slides, but as you know, this is the time of the year that we have the proposed budget hearing. And we've had the inspection period since Monday. And we are working on the 23-24 proposed budget, including the unaudited actuals. And then next, Heather and I will be continuing our month of June, working on the LCAP and the budget components that go into there. So we talked a lot this year. In fact, I didn't even write too many notes because we talked a lot. I think every board meeting we've had some type of discussion. We've talked about the May revised last board meeting. We, we've been hitting on topics as they come up, all year. I know that, I think the board, because you get yourself very educated and it helps me with understanding the budget, the different timelines we have to keep. So I won't belabor a lot of information that you already know in the sake of time, but also because I think we just had a lot of open discussions this year. So in your packet, there are just some common slides that I tend to give you each year about why do we have the budget timeline, what's included in it. And part of that is also with Assembly Bill 1200, which mandates us to prepare a 3-year multi-year projection and maintain our fiscal solvency and have county oversight. So the county office of superintendent of schools, they are our fiscal oversight, and they are the ones who will review our budget, and they will give it a stamp of approval. Okay. And so why are we here today? We're here today because of AB 1200 and the budget timelines. That includes our LCAP and our budget hearing, which is today. There's 2 agenda items. They're very much just routine and ed code compliance to talk about our fund balances, and also to the EPA component of LCFF, which is part of just a draft budget. The final budget will be presented on June 22nd. But as any material differences between the budget, the draft that has been in your board folder and what we present on the 22nd, I'll outline those for you. If there's any material differences, I don't expect any. But then usually after today, we're working on the supplemental forms, which is a cash flow statement, a lot of historical data, comparison reports, and then the LCAP budget components. Okay, just there's 3 types of budget approval. We can have an approved budget, a conditionally approved budget, or a disapproved budget. So we're preparing what we anticipate is to be an approved budget. But there is the verbiage, what qualifies each one if you want to read it. Why we would maybe get a conditional approval, which is if we didn't complete our LCAP and get it approved by September 15th. If our combined assigned and unassigned ending fund balance exceeds the 10%, or we did not submit a resolution with the budget. So we're going to the only reason why I'm reading these out to you is that we are going to have an agenda item later that you will have the proposed current draft of our ending fund balances. And on the 22nd, there'll be the excess amount of the 10% in a resolution for that will be brought to you, which is routine. Okay, if the county saw any concerns with our future year reserves, or if they encountered any budgetary inaccuracies. Okay, and part of the compiling the budget, we really need to start with enrollment, because really enrollment drives almost the entire budget. With enrollment, Shannon and I, we work together, and then we determine what staffing levels we need. Staffing levels, okay, of course, is 85% of our budget. So, but then also determine, looking at our attendance rates, then that determines what our local control funding formula allocation, LCFF funds are. So really, the budget really starts with enrollment, and that's why we really look at that so closely each month. And then there's other things like just STRS and PERS increases, equipment, site allocations, different categorical funding. We have other state funds, and then of course special ed and other programs like that. Okay, looking at our enrollment, we are currently at nearing the end of this week. We are technically at the end of the school year, but presented for you today is our month 10 attendance report. We'll be wrapping up our month 11 over the summer, and we're ending the year at 2,870 students. Can't read it really up there, but it's in your handout. With an ADA of 2,592, we did stay around an 89% attendance rate all year. But then later on in the presentation, we did have some factors that not due to student actual attendance, but due to ADA that we're funded on, will lower that attendance, will lower that ADA, which will technically in the year with a funded rate of around an 87%, 88% instead of the 89. But that's not necessarily the kids not going to school. The 89% is our attendance rate that we had this year, and we're right in line with probably almost nearly every school in California. So statewide average, we're right in there, maybe a little bit below the statewide average, where we've fallen all year.
But I liked that on that slide, 2021 and 2020, 21, 22, we are right at either above by 100 or still above even 2021
Yeah.
numbers. That's wonderful.
Yeah, so depending on where, we've been talking in past 25 years. As the school district has been in a decline in enrollment. So when is that plateau? What is our plateau year, if any? Do we have a plateau year where we even stay steady or start turning and growing enrollment? So it's kind of, did we hit this? We really, right now, we're still in that post-COVID and with California influx with their migration out of California on a statewide, the state is still predicting a 10-year decline in enrollment of averaging, we talked about this last board meeting, of around just under 9% over that 10-year span. Our Strive for 95, we had RVA with 92.52%. This is the actual kids who have who turned in all their work on their program, and you can see the other schools have CHE and LAE 91%, BOE 88.5, 79. This is the year long. Okay. Wanted to talk a little bit about like what the COLA is. There's a definition of the COLA. So really when we talk about a COLA, it's a federal number. And we've had different, the next slide, we brought this to you, the next two slides. I'm just going, you can read the definition. I don't need to read the definition of the COLA to use. But the next slide here is just our historical trend of the COLA, in the fiscal year 22-23, we did have a COLA of 6.56, but the state funded what they call the super COLA of 13.26. And in 23-24, they're projecting an 8.22% COLA. But because we want to look at total dollars, not percentages, just our year over year actual percent increase in funding because of the different components that are included in total LCFF, which we have UPP, we have attendance rates, it's not just this year's dollars times 8%, it has all the components of our attendance rate and our enrollment and our supplemental concentration grants and our now funding on a 3-year average. So all of those components, it has an actual increase in funding of 4.81%. So when you see a news article that the state's giving you 8.22% higher funds, that's not true. I mean, our year over year percentage is not 8.22% more money. That's a COLA put on a per student dollar amount, and it's the per student, and the actual students and their attendance that would make up our total funding, which year over year is 4.81 projected at this time. That's probably the most important thing I wanted to say tonight. So I'll rush it through. Okay, here's a history of our total LCFF funding, and you can see too, as in the slide right before, with the the $1.7 million increase in funding from 22-23 to 23-24. You can see that carries over to the bottom of the Excel file here that I've embedded. And then you can see going into 24-25 and then 25-26 and 26-27. As our 3-year average right now is really artificially inflated by the 1920 and the 2021 dollars amount, which have the hold harmless and the COVID freeze. So, we're seeing that what they were calling a year ago is the fiscal cliff and the ADA cliff. Well, that 3-year average just it softened that blow, but you can see as we get into year 24-25 and 25-26, that catches up to districts. And if you remember, if you ever were at a conference where Mike Fine spoke and he talked about the 3-year average, although we were thankful for it because it gave us time to plan, that was our reality was going to quickly creep up to where we were fiscally. It's going to be with our attendance rates post-COVID and a decline in enrollment. Okay, This is one of the things, just a review of our actual ADA versus our funded ADA. So that the top half of the screen is our actual ADA, what the kids, going to school, our attendance rate, what we actually earned, versus then what we're paid because of that 3-year averaging and the hold harmless. So, and you can see in that 24-25, the 23-24 going into next year, then the 24-25 school year, you see that decline catching up to us. That's just a year-over-year average or difference. Okay. Components of the ending fund balance, which we'll discuss at a later slide, at a later point in the agenda, is we're estimated ending fund balance of just over $10 million. We have this assigned and committed funds listed for you, 3.6 million, with an unallocated ending fund balance that will carry over into the 24-25 school year of just over $6.7 million. But I wanted to highlight that in the 4 subsequent fiscal years, we are projecting a structural deficit, and we are deficit spending in those years by the dollar amounts. So a one-time large ending fund balance, you need to really look 3, 4, 5 years ahead on what you need that savings to kind of get you until you make, until the budget adjustments are made, until enrollment improves or ADA improves, or state that, the state does come back. That if you look back at the slide, there's 3% and 5% COLAs in there, then they get to do a year where they use one-time money and do a super COLA where they give more on the base, the grants. The only problem is that this year going into 23-24, the state budgets, as you've all heard, has a lot of inherent risks in the governor's proposal. Okay, parts on the expenditure side that impact the budget. Probably the most is the increase in PERS cost to a district. And so that's just a payroll expense that we pay. So for every dollar of payroll on top of unemployment insurance, workers' comp, for those of us who are in Medicare or Social Security, on top of that, we pay STRS and PERS, which is part of the state retirement plans. And for, it's 29.8% for on every dollar for classified and 19.1% for every dollar for certificated. And in a nutshell, just the proposed 23-24 budget in draft mode, what the different main categories of expenditures are, and the percent of the total budget. We have that graph for you at each time. Next 2 pages is a summary of our multi-year projections going into the 23-24 proposed revenue, which includes LCFF. Things like Title I, potential carryover included in that Title I, local revenue, such as what we get from Special Ed AB 602, and things like lottery, donation, and a summary of the different categories. You can, all of those are a summary of what is in the SACS forms. So
Awesome reading.
yeah, fun reading. Okay, and then moving forward to the 24-25. So I thought I fixed that one, but it's not fiscal year 2024. What is that? So I thought I fixed that. I just thought I saved my work. So moving forward in the projected ending fund balance for the 3 subsequent years. So we are presenting the county with what we would deem an approved fiscally solid budget, but it's going into the 26, 27, and 27, 28 years that we would, if everything were equal and it's like froze right now, we would be looking at, negative ending fund balances. Okay. So our assumptions in the multi-year projections, they included what we've talked about with the LCFF revenue. There's also an audit adjustment included in fiscal years 21-22 for the independent study. And then there's an ADA revision that we don't know if it'll be an actual audit adjustment or just an internal correction to the 22-23 for our independent study programs. We have included one-time funding and carryover. We have step and column increases for all units are included, health and welfare increases for our certificated groups and retirees. We're status quo on staffing. We really had a post-COVID concern on enrollment, 88% in staffing needs. So we just maintain status quo. Even though we're on the revenue side, we are projecting a decline in enrollment. We stayed status quo on staffing, not knowing we'd rather have the staff, especially with restricted dollars that we would be able to reallocate to if we ended up being overstaffed. So we didn't have any layoffs this year on March 15th. And then we had postponed the 21-22 layoffs because we were utilizing restricted funds. And as we move into the 23-24 school year, and by first interim report of December 2023, we'll review those, and Shannon and I will work together on what our staffing, who's coded to which restricted programs, and what funding will end, and what does our staffing look like. We have, of course, the increased PERS costs, savings from prior year negotiated items, reduction of one-time revenue such as the COVID, and we've had increases in our budgets for natural gas, electricity, and fuel due to the escalating costs, which we've all felt at home as well. But that mellowed out a little bit. Hope it did for you too. Okay, and then questions and next steps. We we finish working on this. We bring it to you on June 22nd. Then we'll submit it to the county office. In July through September, we're closing the books for this current fiscal year. We'll prepare for our fall audit, which is already scheduled in October. And we'll be adjusting to staffing to an actual enrollment. We'll know what butts are in seats come August. And then we'll prepare for any budget revision after the state adopts their budget, because our budget is based on May revise, and there's lots of trailers bills. There's still lots of negotiating between the legislatures and the final enacted budget. Those budget revisions will start incorporating them when we present the unaudited actuals and definitely by the first interim. We'll continue our budget committee next year. We already have those dates set. A reminder, I've already said this, but the current state budget does have risks in it. That's pretty much everyone but the governor saying that the governor's forecast is too high and the revenue side. And really to prepare for reductions in the 24-25 school year to compensate for that. And then we'll just continue to monitor enrollment and staffing. And we've already set dates to collaborate with RTA on master scheduling reviews. It's been a few years since we've met on a regular basis to review enrollment and master schedule and revenue with them. I think that's actually a good thing. And then we're just going to be flexible to the unknowns and the ever changing state guidelines. Questions? I know a lot of you could have written this yourself, so.
No way. Thank you.
BOP, what does that stand for?
The budget overview for parents.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I don't remember that acronym.
Yep.
And then what shrinkage in enrollment are we assuming?
On the budget side of 3%.
3%, okay. I did some quick numbers here just to take a look at based on the years that we had. The first 4 years that we had listed for enrollment to see what the trend was, which was about 3%. Because we had a huge drop in enrollment for the 2019-2020 year. And so we have recouped, it slowed down last year, and then we actually had higher enrollment this year. So I wondered if the trend had continued without COVID, where we would be with those same numbers, and we're actually higher. Yeah, because it would have been at about 2844 is what I saw. So actually that was kind of reassuring to see. Yeah, is that increased just a rebound from COVID?
Or we finally hit that bottom that we've been saying for years and years, when are we going to stop, declining? When are we going to stop? So
who's to say we don't have that, magic 8 ball or whatever, but that looked pretty reassuring to me.
And that's why budget conservatively on funding, but not as much on staffing, so we don't get stuck without being able to hire staff and starting. So that was our philosophy.
Thank you.
Jenny, every year we have the May revised, but this year, as you touched on, we're gonna have the what, December, January revised budget? What part of,
I'm hearing, I just went to, it was, the Friday before Memorial Weekend, and sometimes it's like, why does the county schedule meetings on Fridays before long weekends? Because they tend to do that. But it was really nice because half of the audience wasn't there, and we had, you know, 2 speakers from school services came in. It was just casual roundtable, almost like this, where we can just talk, and if people were probably a little bit less shy to ask questions about specific to their district. And they're not anticipating us having a mid-year cut like we used to. So, but seeing that get compensated for in 24-25. Whether a mid-year cut is warranted, but not happening until 24-25, moving forward.
and is that people based on what the,
I think it's based on their hallway conversations, you know, as their lobbyists. You know,
if they do make cuts, what kind of strategies do we, you know?
that's when Shannon, Kim and I will be in a room together. I feel very fortunate right now that we have a pretty decent cushion. We can react at least for a 1 year, because the remaining COVID-19 dollars, although most of the COVID-19 remaining dollars is more restrictive in nature, and not as discretionary. We still have a very large amount. I didn't bring that dollar amount with me today, to be spent by September 2024. So we could make some decisions on coding current people right now. Perhaps we're, you know, charging a teacher to lottery. We're charging another teacher to supplemental concentration. That's just as appropriate of using those funds instead of maybe something else that the site, you know, that's on our list for our potential purchases of those funds. So we can do some moving around and to increase the 23-24 projected ending balance. We also have not utilized the arts and music discretionary block grant yet. So even though that's probably going to be cut in half, that is, you know, half is still $800,000 for us. That could, you know, add to that cushion. The learning recovery block grant, yes, it's getting cut by what, 2/3 or a third. So that also could fund counselors. That can, you know, we're only charging the new counselor to that, but we could go back and at least do some temporary accounting adjustments on some of these restricted dollars to buy us that year or two. That's just, I haven't achieved that yet.
Thank you, well, and
That's what I would suggest we
part
start
of
with.
why I wanted to do is because I know you're already thinking about it, so what did you say?
Yes, we're already thinking about it. So.
And you said it, I know you said the number, but I didn't see the percentage. What's the percentage of our reserves fund?
I have that buried up in here right now. Our unallocated reserves are just touching about 12%.
Because I believe that's going to be required to be under 10%
Yes.
this year, right?
And which will be our discussion in a future, in a upcoming agenda item and a resolution on June 22nd to address that.
With that in mind, I'd like to entertain a motion from the board for us to adjust the order of our agenda. I'd like us to move item number 12.3 to 12.2. In other words, business services presentation and public hearing on the proposed 2023-2024 budget. Move that up to the next item in the budget, in the meeting, instead of moving to educational services. With Jenny already up there.
Okay.
So I entertain a motion. So move. There a second?
I second that.
All right, so any discussion?
Were we supposed to do this at the beginning?
Yes. It would have been a good, but we didn't.
We didn't do it at the beginning though.
But that's why we're asking to do it now.
Aren't we supposed to do it at the beginning?
We're already past the beginning.
We didn't intend to change it, but that's how it was read, and when Jenny came up and started, I realized it was out of sequence, so now we have to amend the agenda to put it in sequence.
Only consideration I would ask is that since these are attached to public hearings, if there were any audience members prepared to speak at any of these, I don't know if that order would affect them. I doubt it, but I just want to at least call it out.
Everyone's in the room and that here is allowed to speak at that moment. But I think if anything, it allows them to participate. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, and I, but my thing wasn't going.
Yeah, because
that's me.
too many of us have microphones on, so I turned mine off. So you're not, so that, I believe that was unanimous then? So the motion was by Scott, the second was by Georgiana. And that carried unanimously. So with that, we are going to go to now the new 12.2 business services presentation and public hearing on the proposed 2023-2024 budget. And this says, Jenny Haberman, that I read this after your presentation.
Okay, normally I'm already done and sitting back in my seat, so I don't know if you wanted me to stay up here for any more questions during the hearing or just answer the questions after my presentation.
Do you want to be up here for your, you tell me where you want to be.
Yeah.
Since you're there and you have your stuff.
Okay, because I don't have anything else to add unless anyone has any discussion during the hearing.
So we're into public hearing, yes.
Yeah, right. Procedures for public hearings. Public hearings are required on specific items such as the local control accountability plan, budgets, and adoption of curricula. Persons who wish to address the governing board on a matter set for a public hearing must complete a goldenrod speaker's form and submit it to the executive secretary to the superintendent before the meeting is called to order. Once the board president opens the public hearing, individual speakers are then permitted up to 3 minutes to support, oppose, or otherwise offer an opinion on the issue. The board limits the total time for public input to 20 minutes. When public input has concluded, the board president will close the public hearing. The governing board is interested in the ideas and opinions of stakeholders and endeavors to incorporate community views into its deliberations and decisions. At the same time, it must be able to conduct its business in an organized and efficient manner, free from material disruptions. Therefore, in accordance with Board Bylaw 9323 and Government Code Section 54957.9, audience members may not disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of this meeting. Open meeting laws do not confer any privilege or protection for expression beyond that otherwise provided by law. The public's understanding and cooperation are appreciated. Open public hearing. The public hearing is called to order at 7:02 p.m. And I don't think we have any goldenrod sheets.
I have none.
So there are no presentations by the public. With that, public hearing is hereby closed at 7:03 p.m. And now I'd like to introduce Heather Dominguez for Educational Services Presentation and Public Hearing on the Local Control and Accountability Plan.
So this is a very brief presentation. I have a much more lengthy presentation for the curriculum component. So prior to the LCAP public hearing, I wanted the board to know that there's a copy of the LCAP draft in your online board folder for your review. And as Jenny referenced in her presentation, between now and the 22nd, there's ongoing revisions to the LCAP that are still taking place as we finalize the end of the year data, narratives, and update the projected budget amounts. The final LCAP will be presented to the board at the next board meeting, June 22nd, for your approval. Thank you.
Again, public procedures for public hearings. Public hearings are required on specific items such as the local control accountability plan, budgets, and adoption of and adoption of curriculum. Persons who wish to address the governing board on a matter set for a public hearing must complete a goldenrod speaker's form and submit it to the executive secretary to the superintendent before the meeting is called to order. Once the board president opens the public hearing, individual speakers are then permitted up to 3 minutes to support, oppose, or otherwise offer an opinion on the issue. The board limits the total time for public input to 20 minutes. When public input has concluded, the board president will close the public hearing. The quorum, the governing board is interested in the ideas and opinions of stakeholders and endeavors to incorporate community views into its deliberations and decisions. At the same time, it must be able to conduct its business in an organized and efficient manner free from material disruption. Therefore, in accordance with Board Bylaw 9323 and Government Code Section 54957.9, audience members may not disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of this meeting. Open meeting laws do not confer any privilege or protection for expression beyond that otherwise provided by law. The public's understanding and cooperation are appreciated. The public hearing is hereby called to order at 7:05 p.m. Are there any goldenrod papers?
No, there are not.
No. There are no public presentations. So with that, the public hearing is closed at 7. I can't see the clock. So I'm going to say 7:07 p.m. Heather Dominguez. And it appears we have Tracy Canners. And this is for educational service presentation, public hearing on the adoption of the French, Spanish, calculus, and science curriculum.
I think she was a good choice to bring up here because she seems to have a connection with all of you. My compadre over here.
That's right. Senora.
All right, well, good evening, board. We've been doing a lot of work this year. We're looking at and reviewing some new curriculum components. Science has been on the agenda for a few years, actually. We've met with multiple obstacles, pandemics, snowgeddons, all sorts of things. Shortages of substitutes to be able to release teachers to be participants in the process. But we have prevailed with K-5 for NGSS as well as French, Spanish, and pre-calculus. So we're very excited to be presenting those agenda items to you this evening. I have given some updates throughout the year in Friday updates in terms of the progress that we've made, but we're going to do a very brief overview on kind of what that process looked like for K-5 and where the team landed. Maybe.
Is the clicker on?
It is on.
And you just tell me when to go to the next.
Just snap your finger and what was there for you.
All right, so some of the pictures that you're going to see throughout this presentation are our actual students who are participating in the pilot program. So we looked at a couple of different items, and these are some of our kids that were participating in some of the experiments. Next slide. Oh, wait, go back, sorry. I want to make sure that I thank, and I've done this before throughout, but she was such a tremendous asset to this process. I would like to thank Karen Serwin from West Ed, who volunteered all of her time to help us facilitate this. Our district librarian, Lynn Klopfer, who helped us get all the materials, lots of phone calls, and all of our piloting teachers, Tracy being one of them, and Bethany being one of them, and another one's in the audience, Nicole Hazel was also one of them, so some of them were here this evening. I want to thank the piloting teachers for their support of this work because we couldn't have done it without them. Next slide. This was the criteria that the team determined they were going to look at when selecting materials. They wanted to assure that they were aligned to NGSS, that they had hands-on components, that there were notebooks and learning tools so that students were able to write about, so that we could have that writing and that experience component combined. There was some technology embedded, there were assessments that were aligned, and that it was accessible for all learners. This was our journey, she's laughing because it was quite a journey. So we spent 3 days together in August where we determined the criteria, we looked at a lot of different options. We learned about NGSS in terms of what the good NGSS materials look like. Then we spent 2 days pre-screening, looking at a variety of publishers and narrowing it down to 3. There were multiple options. Then we took 2 days and we paper screened additionally and narrowed it down to the 2 that we were going to commit to for pilot. And then of course, Snowmageddon came on board right smack dab in the middle of the piloting process. I think we're in the middle of round 1. Kind of still distributing materials. And so we had to try to get a hold of everybody to get feedback and collaboration, what's going to work best, and then extend the pilot. We had hoped to bring this to sooner in the year and not waiting until our June meeting, but it doesn't always go as planned. So we finished the pilot 5/23, brought all the teachers back together, and next slide. So we are now in the select and recommend process. We started off with developing a district lens, pre-screen, paper screen, pilot materials, select and recommend, and then we will move into implementation. So next slide. I'm going to have Tracy talk a little bit about what the teachers did on the last day, on May the 23rd, when they looked at the components and the work samples from all the students for both products and kind of what that process was like.
So what we did as a group, we set out the student sample from both, or actually, yes, from both of the pilot programs. We had the FOSS and we had the Amplify, and we graded them not based on grade level, because we had kindergarten first and second doing the same curriculum, and I believe 3rd, 4th, and 5th doing the same curriculum. So it was based on their answers of the potential question, the objective, what is sound? We were doing sound and light, and we scored them a 5, 3, 1, or a 0. A 0 was just, there was nothing there. And out of both of them, the one that we chose, is that the next slide?
Next slide.
So, okay, so in the student notebook, we recorded on a Post-it of high quality, and so we set them all out: high quality work, low quality work, and medium quality work. We worked as a group to decide what constituted a high quality, a medium quality, or a low quality. According to those, we set them into different piles and then counted how many were high, how many were medium, and how many were low. We read our teacher selections, our reflections, and the student reflections. Some were on chart paper, some were just on a regular piece of paper of what the students liked. A lot of them didn't like writing, but then some of them did like writing. So the lower grades didn't like the writing, the upper grades liked the writing. So 3rd, 4th, 5th being upper grade, they liked the writing portion of it. And then my class, they were divided half and half. So it was kind of, their own thing. But based on those, the next slide, sir. So based on those, we had to come in agreement as a team what is used to support them. And it was not a vote based on opinions without data. So we did this, like 5 times? 5 times we came together. Do we like this one? Do we like this one? And we kept having to come back. We had to say, this is the data. This is why we are choosing this one. This is why we would like to have this one. So some of them wanted one, some of them wanted the other. We came into a consensus of agreement based on the data of the number of high quality work versus the low quality work that the students had presented to us. So that is why we had chosen the one that we did. Next slide. So these are some of the students. Those are actually my students up there. They were doing the sound. They were trying to make the balls move with a little rod that they loved those things. They'd bang them on the table and it would have vibration. And so the biggest thing that we were talking about was vibration. So the basis of hands-on really, was evident with these students and what they liked to do. I know with the upper grades, if Bethany wants to talk about them, she can, but the upper grades really got into it to the point that they were wanting science more than they wanted any of the other curriculum-based activities that we were doing in the classroom. Damn.
So I just wanted to give some data in terms of ed reports. We really like to look at ed reports as a resource to us because they vet all different kinds of curriculum in terms of alignment to content standards as well as usability. When we looked at when you go to ed reports, sometimes they'll put on and take off particular curriculums. So when we first looked, FOSS was on here for K-5, and by the time we ended the pilot, FOSS, I just pulled this a couple of days ago, FOSS wasn't on here, they pulled that one off. So these were the only 3 K-5 materials that were on ed reports currently, and Amplified, it was the only one that met expectations. They were partially meeting it in usability and met it for the content. And so we felt good about the fact that we had selected a material that was ranked highly with the ed reports. And again, this is the kiddos, they were studying light. Their culminating activity was they were doing some shadow puppet shows. That was in Cindy Parker's kindergarten classroom. Last slide. So thank you. That was the process that we went through for the NGSS. Now, in terms of the calculus and the French and the Spanish, those are a little more smaller groups of teachers because we have maybe 1 or 2 teachers teaching those. Spanish, we actually went through the process last year where we piloted materials, got to the end of the year, and then found out from the publisher that the one that they had selected was not going to be supported moving forward. We thought that would have been nice to have known at the beginning of the adoption pilot process rather than at the end of the process. So we didn't really feel comfortable moving forward with a product that would not be supported. So the Spanish teachers regrouped again. Mr. Whitesaw was a part of that process, and they did select a material. We did have a rubric that they were using to evaluate 2 different components. And then Mr. Longtoe was very involved with the pre-calculus selection and worked with the math teachers on that particular curriculum. Thank you, Ms. Carnes, for your time. And
Thank you. Any questions? You know,
that's all right. Thank you.
so we're going to move procedures for public hearings. Are we? Okay.
Yeah. We're just checking. Good to go. Sorry.
Okay. Public hearings are required on specific items such as local control accountability plan, budgets, and adoption of curriculum. Persons who wish to address the governing board on a matter set for a public hearing must complete a goldenrod speaker's form and submit it to the executive secretary to the superintendent before the meeting is called to order. Once the board president opens the public hearing, individual speakers are then permitted up to 3 minutes to support, oppose, or otherwise offer an opinion on the issue. The board limits the total time for public input to 20 minutes. When public input has concluded, the board president will close the public hearing. Decorum. The governing board is interested in the ideas and opinions of stakeholders and endeavors to incorporate community views into its deliberations and decisions. At the same time, it must be able to conduct its business in an organized and efficient manner, free from material disruption. Therefore, in accordance with Board Bylaw 9323 and Government Code Section 54957.9, audience members may not disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of this meeting. Open meeting laws do not confer any privilege or protection or expression beyond that otherwise provided by law. The public's understanding and cooperation are appreciated. The public hearing is hereby called to order at 7:18 p.m. Any public comments?
None.
The public hearing is hereby closed at 7:19 p.m. Superintendent discussion on classification study for classified management and classified confidential classification by Dr. Kimberly Fricker, Superintendent.
Good evening.
So I wanted to bring the board up to speed on the classification study. I know that Mr. Hanson and the personnel services have been working on this diligently. And I thank you, Mr. Hanson and Morgan, for putting together the presentation that we have before you tonight. Just to start, in terms of the classification. Next slide, please. It's not.
It wasn't just.
I wore it out, Jenny.
So way back in the State of the District report, we did want to have the assurance of equity for all of our employees, adherence to labor regulations and laws, and ensuring that the employees' job descriptions, expectations, and classifications are updated throughout the district. Now, normally it is customary to do this about every 5 years in a district, just to make sure that those job descriptions, expectations meet current standards. We also want to align with enrollment projections, and so if enrollment goes up or decreases, personnel services has to match that with the people that we hire and the classifications that we have. And then, as mentioned before, this is really the first step in doing that overall equity audit across our district. So next slide, please. So the RIM Unified School District is conducting this classified study. We're really doing it in several phases. The first phase is classified management and confidential positions. The second phase is all classified positions, thank you. And the third is certificated management and upper unrepresented positions. And the last would just be certificated positions that would need to be reviewed. This will be, when we talk about working with CSEA or RTA, those will have MOUs, which I believe Mr. Hanson is working on, so that we can have these discussions and do the study outside in a group setting, and then bring it to the negotiations. So it kind of saves time in negotiations as well. The summary of the process: the employees were asked to fill out a verification of job description form where they have their own input into what they currently do in their job, and if that's in alignment with their job description, or if they have additional responsibilities, or maybe sometimes the responsibilities are deleted. We surveyed like districts to have comparative data remarket describing what they have in their job descriptions and in their classification ranks. We analyzed ROWUSD job classifications and descriptions by general function, essential duty, and then supervision of others was a primary deterrent for which classifications people would be recommended into. And then those recommendations for change or alteration will be presented to the Board of Education at a later board meeting at the conclusion of every single phase. So if we chunk it down, we actually can move through the classification study within the year. There are 7 comparative districts that personnel used when we went through this classification study, and those will kind of stay standard. They're more alike our district, as you can see there. And phase 1 is really classified management, and the job classifications that we specifically looked at was coordinator of risk management, coordinator of technology services, supervisor of child nutrition services, supervisor of maintenance and facilities, supervisor of transportation, administrative assistant personnel analyst, and executive secretary to the superintendent. So those would be the confidential positions and classified management that we currently have. The current structure for classification is we have a director, and that director position really oversees 2 or 3. It's designed to oversee 2 to 3 major district departments. The last person who had that director position oversaw transportation, child nutrition services, and facilities, maintenance operation facilities. So those 3 departments were oversaw by that director, what we call director position. We have coordinator that has oversight with district departments. We have a supervisor where they're oversight of area within a district department, and then manager, which is like a site specific department. They oversee site specific departments. The salary schedule structure or recommendations. So when we look at classifications, those classifications all have a salary structure associated with them. So we want to give you just food for thought in reference to what we currently have, and then some options of what we could do. when we looked at the director, what we currently call director, it really seems to us in our discussions that that would be an executive director position. It oversees more than one department, it oversees multiple. And so in the comparative districts, a directorship only oversees one department. And so this really doesn't fit in with the comparative districts. So one of the recommendations could be that we could rename that level, that position that already exists. It's what is much more indicative of what that position does, and rename that as an executive director because it oversees more than one department. It actually oversaw 3 departments. And then you could, in blue would be the new language there. The blue would be, you would layer in what would be a normalized district director, and that would be comparative to the other districts. They only oversee one department. So that's just option 1. It's just food for thought tonight to think about. But we do have this anomaly where between the coordinator and what we currently call as director, there is a huge disparity and a huge gap. And it didn't quite, it seemed like something was missing. And so going back into the history, and I know that Jenny and Morgan were part of that history in helping us decide how our current director became to be. Anyway, let's move on, and then I'll further describe that. When we look at option 2, since that director position, there is such a large gap between coordinator and director. It's a roughly about $45,000 jump between coordinator and director, which is, they're normally, $8,000 to $9,000 jumps up when you go up. So this is a very large jump up that doesn't quite seem proportional. You could just remove it altogether as a Board of Education. And then you would be left with coordinator, supervisor, and manager. The manager position is very alike to the lead position within the CSEA contractual agreement, and it actually falls below that. So the salary schedules don't match up quite right. So the second option or recommendation to justify the classification structure is that you could remove that director position because it seems out of place and exorbitant comparative to the other classifications. And you could remove that manager and just go with the CSEA lead position that's already in the contractual agreement. So those are the 2 options that we have on the table just for food for thought. And when we started to round out what we were thinking about these positions, I want to give you that food for thought as well. I had the personnel department look at those specific classifications and really define them by criteria that would build on each other progressively and logically. So let's start from the executive director, which is the top, would be that top level. Remember, that's our current director that we would be proposing we rename to executive director because it oversees 2 to 3 departments. For accountability, responsibility, and supervision, yes, it would oversee the supervision, but this is more of a global position. If Jenny had, for example, a director of fiscal may be one of these positions that oversee multiple other agencies or departments underneath them. We don't currently have that in our rank and file. So the question would be, do we need it or could we eliminate it? That's kind of the question here. The proposed correction of the classification title director would be this. This is not our current classification. This would be our proposed classification for director. Accountability, responsibility, and supervision of others. They would be over a singular department. For the district office, it would be district wide, and they would have supervision and oversight of others. Moving down to the proposal or the criteria for coordinator, going down that ladder, that line, the accountability, responsibility, supervision of others. Again, it is a district-wide program, but they don't necessarily need to oversee an entire department. They could oversee an area within a department, so underneath a department. And they may have supervision of others, but it's not a requirement of that classification. And again, these are just generalities to try to give order to how we would fill these positions and who would go into those positions. Supervisor, so accountability, responsibility, supervision of others. when you go down to like the supervisor rank, they may oversee multiple sites. So they're not overseeing the entire district, they may oversee like multiple sites. Again, this would be our projected criteria, or our ideal criteria. And then they generally could have supervision of staff, but generally they don't have like evaluation of staff. So they could supervise others, meaning direct or guide, but they don't necessarily evaluate staff. And then finally, if we kept the manager position or if we got rid of it, then we would have to have that rank and file would have to be less than the supervisor. So this would be within a site's program, maybe the manager or of a very large kitchen staff. You could see that at some time if you have a very large high school, say. In our case, we really feel like a lead position would be much more effective than the manager position, but we wanted to give you some idea of what that criteria would be for the manager position anyway, being that we currently still have it on in the ranking file. And then, so as we went through the classification study, there were some inherent things that didn't quite make sense in the whole scope, and I've touched on some of these in the presentation. The current classification structure for classified managers doesn't really align with the hierarchy of other districts. So what we call a district director that is not in alignment with what other districts call a director. Ours oversees multiple departments, other districts oversee one department. So that was definitely something that stood out. Our director, again, it kind of more aligns with like an executive director or senior director, something above a director. And there were large gaps of salary between what we have as director and coordinator, and that's what led us to figuring out that there was a problem afoot. And then that manager salary or that lead is really, we feel like the lead is much more in alignment with how we would utilize that. And it's already in the CSEA collective bargaining agreement. So we feel that would be much more effective. So when we compare classifications, again, one of the big recommendations is how would we, if we do choose to layer in a director position, a true director position, how would we layer that in? Do you want to get rid of what we currently call director and move it down to what is a much more appropriate director level position? And that's where you go back to the two options that we had presented earlier. And that would just be for further discussion. We will be bringing this item back at the June 22nd board meeting. This is just a discussion information part to let everybody understand what it is that we found with this portion of the classification study. What are the issues or problems, concerns that we would have to address, where we would want to address to kind of shape the classification structure. And then the question is, how would we move that forward with the board to correct that? We can do that at the 22nd meeting, or we can wait till August if the board needs much more time or conversation or presentation on the topic. But we did want to bring the concern forward so that we can correct the classification ranks, and then we can assert where people would fall in those ranks. But we have to correct the rank and file first. So with that, I know it's a lot of information and it's slightly confusing. I apologize for all of that. I hope I explained it as well as possible. If you have any questions at the time, I'd be happy to take the questions.
The next slide.
I'm sorry, I don't have that. Sorry, the last slide. Those are just, this is what we'd be presenting at the June 22nd meeting. So once we correct the classification rank and file, then we would be correcting the positions that we briefly talked about earlier.
Any questions?
I know that this is something that everyone's been working on, as you mentioned at the start, for a little while, and I appreciate the effort and I appreciate the outlining of the phases of which we will go through and undergo a classification study. So I think this is the first part of a culmination of a lot of work.
I do have a question. Would it be part of the scope of this study to really look at what our titles are? I know the director versus executive director, but we have like a supervisor who doesn't supervise and a manager who doesn't manage. So is that part of what we could be also considering?
So once we figure, the first part of this, my part of it is really aligning the classification rank. and file.
Mhm.
So that's the step one. And then I pass that over to Mr. Hanson, who actually has done the classification study with Morgan and to assert where our current individuals are in those positions, where they would, if some are going to change, where they would change. If some stay the same, why do they stay the same? And that's why we wanted to have those descriptions outlined so that we have very clear delineatives of, what qualifies you for what position. Because currently, right now, there are some anomalies with even the current people that we have in some of those ranks. And that would be the next presentation that Mr. Hanson would put forward. My job really is to get the rank and file correct for then to pass over to personnel services. And then they go through with what is normally the classification study of putting the people in the correct rank and file. But in our case, our rank and file is misaligned. So that would be the first thing that we need to correct, I think. And you could correct it in one of those, I think one of those two ways.
Any other questions? Thank you. Where we test for the Rotarians is it one of them is it fair for all concerned? Seems like the classification study really ought to be about making it fair for all concerned.
Mhm.
Thank you. Discussion action items 13. Number 1, personnel services approval of one-time off-schedule salary increase for ROP CTE teachers, fiscal impact $17,500. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Cindy?
Second.
Scott? Any discussion?
Just to note that the budget source for that fiscal impact is from the personnel/general fund.
Thank you, because that's what I was gonna ask. That's
That's trying to look it up.
We do think.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. 13 point, I'll get it. Yes. 13.2, personnel services approval of the memorandum of understanding between RIM Teachers Association and RIM of the World Unified School District regarding professional learning community, PLC, for the 2023-2024 school year. Fiscal impact none. Do I have a
So
motion?
moved.
Cindy?
Second.
Scott? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously. 13.3, educational services approval to adopt the Carnegie Learning French curriculum for an 8-year term beginning in the 2023-2024 school year. Fiscal impact $15,200. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Cindy?
Second.
Scott? Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes, budget source ESSER/restricted in instructional materials. And just to confirm and make sure, I think I read all of the quotes correctly. This is a total amount for the 8-year term, not an annual amount, correct?
Correct.
That's what I thought I read. Thank you.
And can you explain the 8-year term?
So when you adopt a material, you pay up front basically to be able to have access to any of the consumables or the technology components for the term of the adoption. So if we were to go beyond the term of the adoption, then we would have to pay for those beyond this payment after the 8 years that typically we adopt in a 7 to 8 year cycle.
So are there consumables or is this more digital support?
Support more digital support and the textbook.
And the teacher.
And it's a small class because it's only 1 or 2, very small, no, Brian's not here, but 1 or 2 sections. So we're kind of reintroducing French. Yeah. Oh, one other thing, this is for French 1 and 2. So we are looking that we would need to add 3 and 4 moving forward, but we want to make sure that the 1 and 2 are sustainable before we invest in 3 and 4. But we're adding that to our adoption timeline for the next 5 years to know that we have to start looking at French 2 and 3 in 2 years out.
Any further discussion?
Just a note, really. I know that you had mentioned a reintroduction of French, but I think we had also talked about, and I understand because we're a small district, and we have limited resources, but I know that there was discussion at some point in time about ASL. I think that would be a lovely endeavor at some point, but I understand that we're restricted on what we really can offer and that master schedules are pretty tight.
Thank you, Jordan. All those in favor say we.
I.
We.
I.
No, that's fine.
It's French. Okay, any no's? Carried unanimously. 13.4, educational services, approval to adopt the Carnegie Learning Spanish curriculum for an 8-year term beginning in the 2023-2024 school year. Fiscal impact $72,300. Their motion?
So moved.
Cindy? Second. Scott? Any discussion?
Jordan.
Budget source ESSER/restricted instructional materials.
Any discussion?
Just really excited that we finally we're finally updating Spanish. That's been an ongoing issue for many years. I know Mr. Weitzel, he's retiring. He's gonna be happy. So there you go.
I think it was our oldest adoption, and it was embarrassing to get the students posted out, so I'm super excited.
Back in pre-cal, yeah.
Yeah.
I had those books when I was in school.
Yeah.
You're 40 years ago.
So 4 years of Spanish and AP Spanish?
That is correct.
All those in favor say C.
I.
C,
Thank you.
we.
C. Any no's? Carried unanimously. 13.5, educational services approval to adopt the SAVVAS. Savas. That's how you say it, Savas. Savas Learning Company Pre-Calculus Curriculum for a 6-year term for grades 9 through 12, beginning in the 2023-2024 school year. Fiscal impact $10,202. I have a motion.
So moved.
Cindy, Scott. I'm sorry, Dana, you didn't want to take that motion, huh? Calculus,
Question, Jordan?
any discussion?
Budget source ESSER/restricted instructional materials.
So I do have a question. It shows for 9th through 12th grade. If for some reason somehow we have a kid coming up through the ranks who might want to take pre-calculus in 6th or 7th or 8th grade, will not be available to them.
That's a good question. I presently, I don't know, that is not available presently, I don't believe,
Oh, is
but
it-
there's a potential for that, I'm sure, I mean, that's a good question. I
What
don't know.
about their counselor?
We're all in favor.
Yeah.
It's not unheard of, and just I saw that 9th through 12th grade beginning, and I didn't know whether it was specific to those grade levels or whether.
This is just for the high school at this point, yeah.
That's for accreditation purposes, and for the, what do you call the adopted course reports for the high school? No. The approved course list has to indicate grade, but,
A2G.
yeah, but intermediate school does not.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously.
Give us an opportunity for all those in favor, say aye.
I was thinking that.
I was trying to think of which one to use, and what's the right one for pre-calculus, and I didn't hit me.
I'll hit you.
Didn't you caught the button there?
Uh-huh.
Educational services approval to adopt the next generation science standards. And GSS K through 5 amplified curriculum for an 8-year term beginning with the 2023-2024 school year. Fiscal impact. Was this the most expensive? $368,400.
So moved.
Second. There's a motion, Cindy, second, Scott. Any discussion?
I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody that worked super hard on this and made this possible. And from what I understand, it's just an outstanding program. So I look forward to seeing it going forward. Thank you.
But could one of you speak really briefly to the rollout of the program? I mean, the material, and we had a conversation earlier.
You have it.
So when we.
One microphone, please. Push the red button.
Well, it is a great, it's an awesome program. It is not fluffy in any means. So when the teachers get their books, it is very academic based. They're going to need time to dive into a deep dive. They're going to need to do some time with it. So we didn't want to roll it out in the beginning of the year with them not having time to look over it. We had talked about maybe giving it to them over the summer, but we know they would have put it to the side and then picked it up 2 days before the school day started. So we said, you know, the best thing is let's roll it out when we get there. We know we're going to roll out just our normal benchmarking, ELA, math, and then we'll have PD on the train, PD for it, so the teachers can actually deep dive into it and then go ahead and feel comfortable with it. At this price, the last thing we wanted to do was say, here you go, and let it go. We know PD is really important in that.
So is the, who is, the next, are they gonna be providing the PD?
Yes.
And is this a full turnkey in terms of, I know there's probably a lot of supplies that are needed to, you can see from the pictures.
Yeah.
So this is not just the textbook, it's a full turnkey program.
Absolutely, and it comes with the totes per each grade level and the classes for them to use in class. And I believe we're doing the reordering of purchases, a piece of, but a lot of it is stuff that we can, consumables that we can get as well, like cotton balls, you know, we can, you know, take that price, we don't need, you know, they're expensive ones, so we can redo those ourselves. But the expectation for Amplify is that you don't roll it out 100% in 1 year. You have to really build up to that and get the kids engaged into it. You have to get the adults 100% on the table with it. So
We have a full day PD in October 13th. So we decided rather than, you know, teachers' mindset at the very beginning of the year is I'm gonna get in my classroom and get things ready. And so our concern was that their first exposure to it was that beginning of the school year, when that's not their mindset, that was not optimal for it being a positive experience. So can get their materials at the beginning of the year. We're gonna order them over the summer. And there are lots of hands-on materials that come with it. And then October 13th is our first full day PD. And so the thinking is that we would devote that day and we break it into K3, K2, 3, 5, so that the teachers can really get their hands on it. And the teachers who piloted it actually experienced a couple of the presenters. And so they're like, oh, we need to get, what was it, Denver guy and Sacramento guy. They need to come out because they were really dynamic. So we want their first experience with it to be very exciting and positive so that they'll want to share that same experience with the kids.
and I think it will be important for the administration of the elementary schools to work with the staff to let them know that if this, you know, it's going to be a little uncomfortable at first, but that we're going to do this as a team. We'll roll it out together. There'll be bumps, but as some of us have piloted it, we will have great PD. That there are people there to help.
How are we going to help the 8 personality teachers that get everything ready in July for their school year, and they're going to like, we don't have science stuff. How are we going to help them prepare?
Well, I think that goes again with the administration that they need to roll out and let them know that they will be getting this pilot information to go ahead and block in, you know, their time accordingly, but that we will train them and it will be there.
That'll be good when we have some new administrators there in the schools. Huh?
Hopefully that comes down the lines.
And I apologize, I should have introduced Bethany Nager-Smith, who just was answering those questions. So 5th grade. 5th grade teacher at Valley and Champion Elementary.
So is this to be used by RDA as well? Yeah, okay, just making sure. And we knew that this one was gonna be a hefty lift in terms of cost. We've been reserving some resources over the past couple of years, anticipating that science was going, and we know we have 6, 8, and 9, 12 that we still need to tackle. And because of all the hands-on materials, it's one of the more costly adoptions. And actually our district librarian did a great job. The first quote we saw was more than this. We all about had a heart attack, to be honest with you. And so she went back to the table and talked with them that we're a small district. We, you know, and we still are going to end up being able to get a kit for every teacher. We didn't think we were going to be able to do that. We thought there was going to have to be a lot of grade level sharing, but this would allow for a kit per teacher. And then we will have to build in the refill, system as we move forward, but, this is better than the first quote that we saw, so, but it is costly, I know.
Okay, then we need to give a shout out to Lynn Clougher.
Yeah, that's why I included her in that, because she did a lot of the behind the scenes negotiating. She's a negotiator. She likes to save money for the district, and she's not afraid to go toe to toe with the vendors, which is to our advantage.
And I just want to recognize again Karen Serlin for all her time.
So each of the individuals that you've mentioned, please convey our appreciation. Thank you. With that, we're gonna.
I have another question. It's K through 5, and as we have TKK combos, will our TK students also be participating, or is there plans for separating them out when we're doing science with kindergarten?
It has.
It has TK components as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the quote, TT
TK
included
included, so
TK.
that may have been my error in not including the TK now.
And just to note that budget source is ESSER/restricted instructional materials.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carried unanimously. 13.7 Educational Services Approval to purchase iReady site licenses through Curriculum Associates for Rim of the World Unified School District elementary students beginning in the 2023-2024 school year. Fiscal impact $54,730. Is there a motion?
So
Cindy, second. Scott? Discussion.
So that budget source is from district Title I funds.
No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously. And thank you to all those who did the, what do you call it, the practice, the rollout, the piloting. Thank you to all the work that they did too, both on science and math. 13.8 Business Services Approval to review and discuss the 2023-2024 fund balances above the minimum reserve requirement. Fiscal impact none. Do I have a motion? Is there a second? Second. Motion Cindy, Scott, second Scott. Any discussion?
That budget source is from Scott Kraft's pocket.
All those in favor of Scott? No. Any further discussions? Did you want to say anything back, Scott?
How about me?
Okay, all those in favor of 13.3, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 13.8, right?
13.7, 13.8. Any nays? Carried unanimously. Consent calendar items pulled for separate votes and discussion are to be taken into consideration during agenda item 15.0. President would like to remove 14.4.
I would like 14.3.
Any others? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion for items number 13.1, 13.2, 13.5, 13.6, 13.14. I've been saying wrong, it's 14. 14.5, 14.6, 14.7, 14.8, 14.9, 14.10, 14.11, 14.12, 14.13, 14.14, and 14.15.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Motion Cindy, second Scott. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Now we'll go back over the two items that have been removed. Item number 14.3. Superintendent approval for Dr. Kimberly Fricker. Whoops, I pushed the button. Superintendent approval for Dr. Kimberly Fricker to attend non-public school NPS annual monitoring visit at Turning Winds School in Troy, Montana. Fiscal impact $1,000 approximately. Cindy.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Scott. Motion Cindy, second Scott. Now discussion.
So the reason why I pulled it is I asked a question about this. It had nothing to do with saying no to Dr. Fricker herself. It was about the fact that I had a question as to why SELPA suddenly changed to be where districts have to visit the out-of-state MPS. What changed? And so that was my question, especially because I asked all the time to give the story as to why in advocacy, why is SELPA so important to smaller school districts? And one of the points I always make is the wraparound services, the ability for them to provide things to us that would be too costly for us to do on our own in districts like ours. And so what the response is when I both in talking to Shannon and to Dr. Fricker, is that at the beginning of this year, Patty Matheny stated that SELPA wants to push this more towards the districts taking on this responsibility of the out-of-state visitations. SELPA itself used to do these visitations as out of state, correct?
Yes, that's what yes, that's what was conveyed to us at the beginning of the year when we met with SELPA.
So now that's why we're changing our practice, because we've never been slapped on the hand for not doing it. We've never been out of compliance for not doing it or any of that. It's just that this has been something that was indicated by SELPA at the beginning of the year.
So yes, it was. I don't know that it changed because obviously I wasn't in this SELPA prior. So I don't know the history on if they required it by districts in the past or not, but this year is very clear that we were required to go. We actually had two students, one was in Florida and one was in Montana. So we split them up so that Shannon was gonna do the Florida one, I was gonna do the Montana one, and then we would switch every year thereafter. But they made it very clear that it was the district's responsibility. And then when I went to the board meeting last week, they said I'm sick in June 30th, you gotta get them in. So we intended to go earlier, but then we had snow again.
So I just want to make sure everybody knew I was not pulling this because I was not approving it. It's just that I had questions as to why we had a change in direction. And I would ask the question, I didn't know if you guys got that information forwarded, but you know, if I'm talking about SELPA, I want to know what's being done for us and what we're being paid, what costs we're picking up.
Thank you, Cindy.
Just to note that since we pulled this item, that budget source comes from special education funds.
Shannon, if you don't mind, and I know people like to stay around, but for anyone who's looking to say, what in the world is SELPA?
Special Education Planning Local Planning Agency. Special Education Local Planning Agencies. There it is.
Okay. And how do they relate to us?
So I work with SELPA on pretty much an everyday basis. It's our guiding, it's our governance body with special education. We go through them whenever we are having questions that is, you know, on the legality side, with our alternative dispute resolution. They provide trainings for our special education staff and for management on the special education side and on the site admin side. And they provide the necessary support for our parents as well. They have workshops throughout the year on various topics. And they're there to support us to ensure that we are following the guidance of IDEA.
And would they be a resource for parents who are concerned that their student might need special education?
Yeah, so if they do need special education, what they do is they parents have the right to call down to SELPA. SELPA will call us and say, hey, we parent X, Y, and Z reached out to us. these are their concerns, and then we would follow up with the parents. Stelpa does a great job of looping us back into it as a district, so we can correct it here at our at the home level.
Thank you. All those in favor of 14.3 superintendent approval for Dr. Fricker, say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. And then 14.4 personnel services approval of the personnel page. Fiscal impact is budgeted. And but we have some special considerations that are being made on that personnel page for principals, I believe. Who wants to speak to that?
We have to make I so move.
Okay,
Thank you.
I second the move before we talk.
Yes,
That's the
sorry.
proper way. So motion by Cindy to approve 14.4 personnel services, seconded by Scott.
Budget source personnel / general fund / various accounts.
Who are the special people that are being recommended on there?
Well, in the audience, as we speak, we have Bethany Nagersmith. She is moving out of the classroom into the principal role at Valley of Enchantment Elementary. We are super excited, and my favorite word, super stoked to have her as our new principal at Valley of Enchantment. She's going to continue on the success and take BOE into a whole another journey. We're excited to have her.
And do you want to say hello?
Our second one was here earlier in the evening, and we are excited to have Jacqueline Longtail from Rialto Unified School District. She is graduate of Rim of the World High School and a product of Rim of the World Unified. So she is coming home, and so we are excited to have Jacqueline Longtail to be the new principal at Lake Arrowhead Elementary, and she's going to continue on what Ms. McGilvery has done over at Lake Arrowhead Elementary for the last, I believe, 7 years, and so she's going to continue on that tradition over there, and we're very excited. She comes to us from Rialto, as I mentioned, with a lot of experience, and just we're very fortunate to have her back with Rim of the World.
Okay, can I add, I did go to LAE and MPH.
I apologize for that. Let's make it more complicated. BOE and what'd you say?
No, LAE and MPH.
LAE and MPH. So
You did graduate high school, though, right?
Not from RIM.
she did graduate from high school. So we didn't want to acknowledge it because it wasn't from RIM. There we go. But hey, welcome home.
So it's really cool that if we approve this motion, two newest principals, both are coming back home, having been taught the foundations of their education right here, and that is really special. I should say that there's a lot of positive comment. I would get in so much trouble if you all vote no on this at BOE. Okay, so there's a lot. Oh my goodness, look at Tracy already. So there's a lot of positive comment there, and so with that, all those in favor of 14.4 personnel services approval of the personnel page, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carried unanimously.
I can say absent.
So now Tori, you say goodbye. Tracy, you don't get all that responsibility because now you have, we have that. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
In the newest role. 16. Governance team, future agenda items, planning, time allotted for the Board of Trustees to request agenda items for future meetings. I think these are items that we've already been requesting: resolution for parents' rights, cybersecurity presentation, and an EL presentation plan. Are there any others?
No, just clarification in that EL, the presentation plan, we can make sure that we
go over that roadmap, you know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, awesome.
Well, we're getting clarifications, Mr. President, that the resolution of parents' rights, is that a resolution that you'll be planning to bring to the board? So you're drafting that and.
And we're talking with staff. And it's actually based on the one that was presented to Congress. This one I mentioned to you 2-3 meetings back.
I recall it, I just, was curious.
I thought we were drafting, or that
Yeah,
we directed them to draft a parent's rights. Not based on any.
No, it was based on, no, I very clearly said it was based on,
Not in the minutes.
no, I don't recall that, but I think it should be a board agenda item if we want to direct staff to draft anything.
we already asked for it to become, that's what this is saying.
Well, you
or
requested
agenda
it.
item.
Yeah, I don't mind it being an agenda item to discuss whether we want to draft something. But I think there should be board direction on whether we want to direct staff to spend time doing something. I don't think it's appropriate for one board member to be able to direct staff to say, I want this resolution, so please, staff, can you do that for me? And then bring it to the board. I think the board should have a say of whether we want to direct staff to spend time on something before it comes to the board. I just feel like I don't feel like I have the privilege or the power to be able to say to any board member or any staff member, can you please do this for me? I can ask questions, of course, that's the main power of a board member, but I don't feel I have that power to direct them to do something. I think traditionally what we've done when we want to introduce new materials is that we take 1 or 2 board members to go off and do it on their own and then bring it to the board. Is that happening to staff?
Either with or without staff, so,
I see.
but what you're recommending or suggesting is that for this future agenda item, that it be something that we begin the process with by having a board discussion prior to there being additional effort or resources expended to it.
I would say that we ought to set direction on that item before we do something. Now, if 2 board members want to get together and draft their own and bring it to the board, then I think that's a different story. I just feel that we should set the direction before we have staff do stuff. That's just my thought.
So again, it's a procedural. I agree, because I don't remember basing it on a congressional bill, which I'm vastly opposed to.
Well, we can check the minutes, but having been the person who recommended that we put it on the agenda, I actually stated that at that time.
You stated the bill name, because I don't remember the bill name.
I don't know whether I stated the bill name.
I know that you asked for
Actually,
parent rights should
so
be,
you're interrupting.
well, I'm sorry, but you interrupted me.
Oh, I answered what you asked. Go ahead, Cindy.
I'm saying that you didn't state the bill that you wanted the resolution based upon. You stated that you wanted parent rights, that something be worked up on parent rights by, and I think you said that side of the table.
So are we wanting to take action to ask one of the board members or 2 of the board members to do this?
I do recall that you mentioned it was, that you mentioned the Congress. I don't remember the bill number being mentioned, but I do recall that in the requesting that, just from my recollection. So, but I think the question is, do we want to have 2 people present this? Correct?
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. I don't mind, but I still want it to be brought up. That's the point. And I've asked for that now twice. And that's why it's again here on, because it needs to be brought up as an agenda item. However we do that, if 2 of us do that, whatever. No one said 2 need to do it. But last time, superintendent actually responded that they would start working on that, but I'm glad to do it, however, but I'm asking for it to be done.
I'm thinking that it probably should be, Jordan had mentioned, a discussion first, if we're going to be having resources from the district, put effort into it, in terms of see where it is with the priorities. So in order to get there, we probably need to have a board discussion to be able to indicate that this is the direction we want to expend resources on.
Do we have procedures like this that state this is the process? Because this is where we come to in the agenda, where we ask for agenda items. I followed the procedures that we have for requesting something. So do we have written procedures then that we can follow in the future so we know, so that board member doesn't, in this case, do something that goes against what some believe is our process?
I think that that's a really good point. We've never well defined or written out, we've never formally written out the process of it, future agenda items. What I've seen other districts do is, here's something that I would like to put on a future agenda item, and the board votes on whether that would like that on the future agenda or not. I've seen that be the only formal process. I'm not sure how many districts do it. I know some districts do. I'm not sure if some districts don't. But maybe Cindy might. I looked at Cindy only because she speaks to so many other districts. But that's the only suggestion I might have, is we also look into formalizing that in some way if there are. We've never really had too many.
So Jordan, how would we say that? Because I think that we ought to have some type of procedure that we define. So how would we put that on a future agenda item?
So for any board member can bring forth any resolution, that's, I think, something we board members can do independently. I think
Is that accurate?
I believe any board member can, but I'm not certain. All I know is that we have no individual authority. We can't, I know something that I
Correct.
learned very, very vehemently in CSBA training and Masters in Government training is that we do not have the power to direct staff individually. So that's the only reason I bring it up. But I would say that we could formalize that definitely, either in board policy or I don't know,
Um,
should be in our governance handbook.
yeah, I don't think it needs to be formalized in board policy because it's
Yes.
procedural, it's procedural. So, I think that, I like, what Jordan said in terms of a discussion of how this looks like, instead of bringing a finalized product to the board. I don't know, I kind of like that. A little bit more
Option.
collaborative.
We started looking into this, and head code has, the California state has their parent rights. And it's pretty, vague and long. So I think we're looking at this because we've started this, there's different ways on the parent rights that that we could go in that direction. So I just wanted to put that in, that we have started, and California has its own, and there's quite a few out there. So
Right, there's parent rights already enshrined in ed code and in case law. So a starting point, and parents don't know that. So one of the starting points is pulling those and extrapolating them out of ed code, out of case law, and literally writing them down. And that could be the base, the foundation and jumping off point. Because those are already protected parental rights. And in terms of looking at curriculum and being able to review curriculum, we just did it tonight, and having materials out, the ability to meet with teachers. We have a practice, it's not enshrined in ed code or anything in our district, as a parent contacts a teacher or administration that, we encourage everybody to respond in 24 hours and things like those. So those are our practices, but there are actual rights, but parents don't know that they have these rights that are already protected.
I just want to say one point of order. Under your bylaws, if you have two board members who agree to have an item on the agenda, you can put an item on the agenda. I think the difficulty here is the description of parameters to create something. So maybe the first step is to put the item on the agenda, have the board discussion and discussion information, and then you can set direction and guidance. At that time, we can present and bring the information like we normally do for the presentation. for the board's consideration, have the discussion. And then move to the next phase, given the direction, that the board collectively gives us during discussion information. But technically during this time, if 2 board members agree, the item can go on the agenda.
So would that be a vote at this time since it's on this?
It's not necessarily a vote, but if you have 2 members in agreement, then the item can go on, just like agenda review. If you have 2 members in agreement, they can alter whatever's on the agenda. It's the same format.
I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Question with that is, what's the difference between having it go on for point of discussion versus having it go on as an agenda item? That makes sense.
Well, everything would go on,
Yeah.
In the current system, everything would go on discussion information anyway, so therefore the board can have a full board discussion on it. You can speak freely, you can talk to each other, you can talk to us, and give direction to us under discussion information. If it goes to action, once it's created, it would have to go to action anyway, and then be presented as a final product for you, the board, to take vote on to inactivate it into being. So it would go through this two-step, at least a 2-step process anyway.
It's a normal process.
That makes sense to me.
So I'm not sure where we're going though.
Any other items?
No, I would say that Bill, I would be your second person to agree to put this on as a discussion item, because I know you've been wanting it, so let's do it with that procedure that Kim outlined, which is put it on as a discussion, as a presentation of what, you know, and follow that process, because then it seems a little bit more collaborative in its effort to get us to the action item to approve of one product. Okay.
I guess that's the only way I see anything going on to the agenda. So I'm not sure that I quite understand what we have not wanted to happen
I don't.
that I already was requesting. So I appreciate that, Cindy. I think we're still going to need to work on this. So I'm going to add another agenda item, and that is evaluating our procedures for making proposals to the board. So what our governance documents actually have, I'd like that to be an additional item. What is our procedure for making a proposal?
Considering that would be a, kind of board business, I'm wondering whether that might be something that'd be worthwhile for discussion at our retreat.
Yes. No?
We need to put some time limits on people.
But what you're suggesting is just like a quorum paragraph describing.
Right.
That can be
Yeah.
15
Yeah.
minutes.
And I will look at our governance documents to see if we have anything. Okay, so I will take responsibility for that.
15 minutes.
Not y'all. Any other items? (17) Future meeting dates. Regular board meeting, June 22nd, 2023. Workshop meeting that was scheduled for after the June 22nd meeting has been canceled. Board retreat is June 23, 2023. I believe that is from,
9 to 4.
Yes.
that's what I was about to say. I believe that is from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. There is no need to recess to closed session. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Cindy motions.
Cindy, back to adjourn. Scott, second that motion to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carried unanimously. The meeting is adjourned at